This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Covel. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. Ben Simmons is a professional basketball player. I watched him last year with the 76ers, the Philly team, the Philly NBA team, choke big time. A 6'10" guy who was scared to dunk the ball. Coming into this season, this caused a big problem. Simmons then refused to play for the team because the rest of the team and the coach criticized him. He then declared that he had mental illness. Did not play for the entire season. Halfway through the season, he got traded to the New Jersey Nets. I guess the Brooklyn Nets these days. Got traded to the Brooklyn Nets and did not play. And now they just lost to the Boston Celtics in the first round of the playoffs, and Simmons did not play. Now, at first, they said Simmons was not playing because of the prior excuse of mental illness. It was now a back injury. But then they came back and they said, in the last day or two, it's mental illness again. Why do I bring this up? I just had a podcast guest last night talking about this very issue, mental illness. Now, the episode's not yet live, but I wanted to bring it up today because I thought there's an interesting parallel with trend following. Did you see that coming? Ben Simmons, mental illness, and trend following. Trust me, there's a connection. To set the stage, let me ask you, have you ever heard of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders? The shortened version is the DSM. I think I've heard of it, but it had left my mind. The DSM is the Bible. This lists all of the mental conditions, the disorders, etc. Psychiatrists, psychologists, general practitioners. This is the Bible they use when someone shows up to their office and says, I'm not feeling well, or something bad is happening in my life. And then ultimately, the reason for which 50% of America is gacked up on psychotropic drugs, antidepressants, Zoloft, Paxil, all this kind of stuff, is because of the DSM. The DSM gives cover to all the medical professionals to go ahead and prescribe all these drugs. Now, do you really think 50% of Americans have a mental disorder that requires pharmaceutical drugs? Because that's where we are today. Ben Simmons is probably in that camp. He's declared he has a mental disorder, a mental illness. But let's dive in a little bit here. What is this DSM? Where did it come from? Well, it's a damn big book. It's been around for a while, since the 50s. And they keep adding more and more mental disorders to it. So if somebody walks into your office, if you're a medical professional, they tell you how they're feeling, you flip this book open and you look for something that sounds familiar to what they might be describing. Then you prescribe them a drug. That's it. That's the system. Now you might want to ask yourself, where did this DSM come from? Well, psychiatrists, psychologists, all the various professionals over the years have added to this beast of a book, what they often call the Bible of psychiatric disorders. Now here's where it gets interesting. Let's get into the specifics. Now I'm just doing a brief run through today, but enough that you hear what I'm going to say, you might do a little investigating. Trust me, it comes back to trend following. To quote from my upcoming guest's book, some of the most prominent psychiatrists have referred to DSM diagnosis as constructs and placeholders. As former National Institute of Mental Health Director Thomas Insel put it, we, quote, actually believe diagnoses are real, but there's no reality, end quote. Alan Francis, a one-time chair of the DSM task force, is quoting as saying that the DSM diagnoses confuse, quote, mental disorder with the everyday sadness, anxiety, grief, disappointments, and stress responses that are an inescapable part of the human condition, end quote. Steve Hyman, another former NIMH director, called DSM diagnoses, quote, fictive categories, end quote, and that the DSM is, quote, an actual scientific nightmare, end quote. So why are all these insiders saying this stuff on the record? Because there's no science. There's no science, meaning there is no biological proof, so to speak, where you can say this individual is having this particular problem affecting their biology. Therefore, we can diagnose XYZ and then prescribe XYZ drug. That doesn't exist. It's fiction. It's made up. Are you getting an odd feeling in your system yet? Wait till you hear me on the podcast. Wait till you hear me on the interview. I got really hyped up. I mean, all it takes is a few little searches around the internet to find all kinds of professionals saying that the DSM is made up out of whole cloth. There's no biological connection. There's no scientific method here. It's feelings. It's the feelings of the individual saying, I feel this particular way. Then it's the feelings, the subjective feelings of the medical practitioner to analyze that individual and then prescribe a drug. No science. Ben Simmons, no science. Now, what's also been happening in recent years in the society as a whole? If somebody walks out and says, I have a mental health condition, I have a disorder, what happens? Everyone backs off. That's what happened with Ben Simmons. People backed off. He said, I have a mental disorder, even though he was refusing to play basketball because he said he had this disorder and still wanted to be paid $30 million a year or $40 million a year, whatever it is. It's a get out of jail free card. All you have to do is raise your hand and say, I have a mental disorder. Here's the DSM. And that's it. Right now in society, we're conditioned, accept it. No science, zero science, zero reliability, zero provability. That's frightening. Now, let me dovetail and connect it to trend following. Or at first, let me connect it to other styles of trading, typical fundamental trading. You can have all of the economic knowledge. You can be the PhD from the University of Chicago, brilliant mind, the highest SAT scores, the fabulous IQ. You know all of the economic theory. Now, how the F does that connect to when do you buy? When do you sell? How much do you buy or sell? What markets do you trade? What are the objective rules that all of that economic background, all of that brilliance, so to speak, how does it apply scientifically to buying and selling? Well, it doesn't. Just like the DSM doesn't scientifically connect to what it purports to connect to. Diagnosing people that have these disorders which are often, in many cases, simply just from the imagination of medical practitioners. They developed a name for this disorder. By the way, the DSM has over 500 disorders now. Now, again, before somebody wants to also say, Mike, you're out on a limb here. You're out of your league. Really? Am I? There are 500 disorders in this book. This is the book that governs how psychotropic drugs are doled out like candy. You really think that 50% of the country deserves to be on psychotropics? Yeah, that's what I thought. Back to the famous economist or the person on CNBC, the soup du jour of the week, who has all of the resume and all of the background, making a prediction that is not attached to science in any way, shape, or form. They can't replicate it. You see, there's not much difference between the psychiatrists and the market pundits. It's the same shit. Or the economist from the University of Chicago. Same shit. Different day, same shit. This is what's cool about trend following. Because trend following is not that. Trend following is a science approach. Objectively here are the markets. Objectively, here is a rule to enter. Objectively, here are the rules to exit. Objectively, here are the rules for how much you should bet on each trade. And objectively, here are the markets you should trade. Maybe it's not sexy enough. It's not cool enough. It doesn't sound pretty enough. But it's real. And as you watch what's happening in the markets right now, massive commodities moves, massive bond moves. How you feeling? Are you feeling like the system that you've been trusting since '08, the zero interest rate policy system? How you feeling about that, baby? Feeling confident? Feeling like buy and hold or buy and hope has got you secured and tucked into bed? And those Federal Reserve officials, as I've long talked about in this podcast, are not slipping into your room at night and trying to kiss you on the forehead. Maybe in a worst case scenario, maybe they're trying to kiss you on the lips. All to satiate you, to calm you down, to let you know they are in control. Those Federal Reserve officials that also, not unlike the psychiatrist in the DSM, not unlike the market pundits on TV, not unlike the University of Chicago economist, those Federal Reserve officials, they're making it up as they go too. You think they got some science behind their decisions? Give me an effing break. It's all politics and you know it. But you got a life to live. So if all of these characters, all of these actors in society are running circles around you, telling you, listen to me, I'm an expert. Listen to my diagnoses. That's not so smart. Not in this day and age. The shit has hit the fan. Now the question becomes, now that that shit has hit the fan, what are you going to do? Sit there? Take it? Just trust the system? Trust that they will fix it for you? They will fix you? They will take care of you? Is that what you really want? Who the hell wants that? Everybody wants some sense of freedom. The thing that I love about, for example, my book, Trend Following, the 5th edition, all 220,000 words, it's the expansion of this podcast. It is the detailed rundown of this podcast right now today. So you say, well, I like what you're saying today, Mike, but give me a little more. Go buy that book. Oh, yeah, you just want money. Oh, go to hell. I don't care what you say. Go buy that book if you're serious. If you like my point of view, if you like where I'm trying to steer you to think in a more objective fashion, a more scientific, rigorous fashion, go read all 220,000 words. You'll walk away and you'll realize that the gatekeepers, the people at the door, the sheep herders, the politicians, the friendly people on CNN, the friendly people on Fox, the friendly people everywhere that are trying to move you around on the playing board. You don't see it yet, do you? You got to see it. You do see it, right? You're on the playing board. You're being moved around. Now, why don't you just step off to the side and play an entirely new game? That's the pitch. That's the direction that I want you to consider. It's really easy when you look at society these days. Bring up an example like Ben Simmons, the basketball player. Bring up the DSM, this psychiatry handbook of all of these made-up conditions that have no biological connection. The economists, the Federal Reserve officials, they all tell you they're out looking for you. 50% of America is gacked up on psychotropics. 50%. That means probably 50% of the people listening are gacked up. Why the hell do you want to be on this stuff? Walk away. Walk away from the pundits on TV. Walk away from the psychiatrist. Walk away from the damn drugs. Get a perspective. Get an objective perspective. Get objective people in your life that support you, want you to do well, and want you to see how the damn game is played. Not just to see you sit there like a damn sucker and get kicked in the ass. It's time for you to start kicking people in the ass. It's a hell of a lot more fun. I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.